Hello there, and welcome to the Drift to Stars. I'm so glad you found your way here tonight. Wherever you are right now, lying down, eyes heavy, the day beginning to loosen its hold, this is a good place to be. Tonight, we're going to wander together through some of the quieter, more beautiful corners of the human mind. Psychology has uncovered things about how we think, feel, remember, and dream that are genuinely wonderful. Not in a loud way, in the way that makes you exhale slowly and think times oh. So that's what's been happening. Asterisk. And just before we begin, if these calm, curious explorations help you unwind, consider liking and subscribing to the channel. It helps others find their way here too, one sleepy soul at a time. Now, if you're ready, let's begin. There is something that happens late at night that scientists have quietly noted for years. As the hours deepen and the world grows still, something in the human mind begins to soften. The filters we carry through the day, the careful phrasing, the managed impressions, the small performances we offer the world begin, almost imperceptibly, to loosen. Fatigue lowers the cost of honesty. The social armor grows heavy, and the mind, tired of holding it, simply sets it down. This is why the conversations that matter most so often happen after midnight. Not because the dark makes us brave, but because the day has finally worn away the parts of us that were pretending. Words come differently then, slower, truer. The things you've been meaning to say find their way to the surface almost on their own, as though they'd been waiting all along for the quiet. There is a gentleness in that, a kind of permission the night gives, without asking anything in return. And even when words have stopped, even in the deep stillness of rest, something continues. The brain, which has been working since before you were born, and has never once stopped, keeps going, quietly, steadily, drawing nearly as much energy and stillness as it does in the middle of a complicated afternoon. Imagine that, the organ you use to worry, to dream, to recognize a face across a crowded room. It doesn't rest the way a muscle rests. It hums, it maintains, it holds the whole of you together without being asked. Even now, as you begin to slow, your brain is tending to something. Like a lighthouse keeper who never leaves the tower, the light keeps turning, long after the ships have passed. When you're not focused on anything in particular, not solving a problem, not following a conversation, just letting your mind wander, something remarkable comes online. Neuroscientists call it the default mode network, though that name does it little justice. It is the brain's way of opening inward, a kind of soft interior wandering, where thoughts drift without destination, where the mind moves through memory and possibility, and quiet wandering without any urgency at all. It was once thought to be the brain doing nothing. Now we understand it may be where some of the most important work happens. Integration, reflection, the slow, unhurried process of making sense of a life. You have likely felt it before, that particular quality of thought that comes when you're staring out a window, or walking somewhere familiar, or lying exactly as you are now. That gentle loosening, that sense of the mind ranging quietly outward. That is not emptiness. That is the brain doing something it loves. Among all the senses, smell alone takes a different path. Every other sense, sound, sight, touch, taste, travels first through a relay station deep in the brain before reaching the regions that make meaning of it. Smell does not wait. It moves directly into the limbic system, the ancient interior where emotion lives, where memory is held. No detour, no processing delay. This is why a scent can arrive before a thought. Why the smell of something rain on warm pavement, a particular soap, something cooking in a kitchen from long ago, can place you somewhere before you've even registered what you're smelling. The feeling comes first. The recognition follows, blinking, a few steps behind. Of all the ways we take the world in, smell is the most direct route to who we have been. And sometimes, what that route delivers is extraordinary. A single scent, faint and half noticed, can open a door you didn't know was still there. A memory so detailed, so lit from within, that for a moment the years between now and then simply collapse. The feeling of being somewhere you haven't been in decades arrives with a completeness that no photograph could replicate. Psychologists named this the Proust effect, after the writer who tasted a small cake soaked in tea and found himself returned entirely, physically returned to his childhood. What he described was not nostalgia in the ordinary sense. It was arrival. The past, suddenly and without warning, present again. The mind holds more than we know, and sometimes it gives it back to us all at once, through something as small and ordinary as a smell drifting through a room. The brain does not store all moments equally. It cannot. There is simply too much, too many seconds, too many small ordinary details for everything to be kept. So it selects. And one of the most reliable things that earns a memory its place is emotion. When something is felt deeply, joy, grief, fear, the particular ache of something beautiful, the brain releases chemicals that essentially say, asterisk, hold this, asterisk. The amygdala signals the hippocampus. The moment is marked. It goes somewhere deeper than the ordinary hours go. This is why you can remember exactly where you were when something overwhelming happened, but struggle to recall what you had for lunch 3 Tuesdays ago. Emotion is not a distraction from memory. It is the mechanism by which memory decides what matters. And what it keeps, more often than anything else, is feeling, not the sequence of events, not the exact words, the feeling, the texture of a moment, the quality of light, whether you felt safe or loved or suddenly very alone. Two people can share an experience entirely the same afternoon, the same conversation, the same room, and walk away with memories that barely resemble each other, because what each person felt was different. One remembers warmth, the other remembers uncertainty. Both are remembering truly. Both are remembering the version their emotion preserved. Memory, at its core, is less like a recording and more like a painting made from life, shaped by how the painter felt standing in front of it. There is a particular kind of restlessness that comes from leaving something unfinished, a task not completed, a thought not resolved, a conversation that ended before it was done. The mind keeps returning to it, not intrusively, not dramatically, just quietly, insistently, like a door left slightly open in another room. This is called the Zeigarnik effect, named for the psychologist who first noticed that waiters could remember every detail of an unclosed tab and forget it entirely the moment the bill was paid. Incomplete things create a kind of gentle loop. The brain holds the thread, keeps it available, returns to it without being asked. It evolved, most likely, to help us follow through, to keep us connected to what still needs doing. But it means that the mind, left to itself, is always leaning slightly toward what isn't finished yet, which is why something as simple as writing a list can feel like putting down a weight you didn't realize you were carrying. When you write a task down, when you give it a place outside your own head, the brain registers something like relief, not because the task is done, but because the mind has been told, asterisk, this is accounted for. You don't have to hold it anymore. Asterisk, the loop closes. The door in the other room swings gently shut, and whatever had been quietly humming at the edge of awareness goes still. There is real wisdom in this. The mind was not designed to store everything and carry everything and track everything at once. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for it is simply to write something down and let it rest. One of the most quietly remarkable things researchers have found is that gratitude, the simple, unhurried act of noticing what is good, changes the body's chemistry in measurable ways. Cortisol, the hormone most associated with stress, decreases. Regions of the brain linked to warmth and connection become more active. The immune system, over time, strengthens. Not from grand gestures, not from forcing happiness where it isn't, just from pausing, gently, and allowing something good to be real for a moment. A person who mattered, a warmth you were glad for, something small that was, nevertheless, enough. The body responds to that noticing, as though it had been waiting to be reminded that not everything is a threat, that some things, right now, are simply and quietly fine. And the body, it turns out, is always listening to the face. There is a loop running between expression and emotion that most of us never notice, a quiet conversation happening just beneath awareness. When the muscles of a smile engage, even without joy behind them, signals travel inward. Neurotransmitters shift. The brain receives something it interprets as a sign of safety, of ease, and responds accordingly. Not dramatically, not like a switch being thrown, more like a window being opened just slightly, a small change in the quality of the air. This is the facial feedback hypothesis, the idea that the face does not only express what we feel, but participates in creating it. The body is not just a vehicle for the mind, it is in conversation with it, constantly, offering small suggestions the mind often quietly accepts, and the face speaks in ways even its owner cannot always read. Beneath every deliberate expression, micro-expressions flicker, lasting sometimes less than 1/5 of a second, too fast to control, too brief to consciously register. A flash of something before the mask resettles. A moment of feeling that crossed the face before the mind had time to decide whether to show it. Psychologists who study these fleeting movements have found that they often reveal emotions the person hasn't yet named for themselves. The face, in those small unguarded instants, speaks more honestly than words. It is a kind of transparency the self can't always prevent, an emotional truth, surfacing briefly before being drawn back beneath the composed exterior we carry through the day. We are, each of us, more readable than we imagine, and more connected than we know. There is a tendency so natural it happens without any intention to begin matching the person you're with. Their posture, gradually, becomes yours. Their pace of speech, without your noticing, starts to shape your own. Their gestures find their way into your hands. This is mirroring, and it runs like a quiet current beneath almost every human interaction. It is not imitation. It is something older and more instinctive, a way the nervous system signals. Asterisk, I am with you. I am attending to you. You are not alone in this moment. Asterisk. And the person being mirrored, even without knowing why, tends to feel it. A sense of being understood that arrives before any particular thing has been said. The body, it seems, has its own language of belonging. Researchers who studied this mirroring tendency gave it a name, the chameleon effect, after the creature that takes on the colors of its surroundings. What they found was that the more naturally and unconsciously we mirror someone, the more warmly they feel toward us. Not because we've done anything calculated or clever, but because synchrony, to the nervous system, reads as care. When two people are truly at ease with each other, their bodies often move in a kind of quiet unison, a shared lean forward, a simultaneous exhale, laughter arriving at the same moment. These small alignments are not coincidences. They are the body's way of saying what words sometimes cannot, that in this moment there is no distance between us. And sometimes what crosses that distance is something as simple as a hand. Research has shown that physical touch during pain, a hand held, a shoulder gently steadied, measurably reduces the brain's perception of discomfort, not merely as comfort, as a genuine shift in how pain signals are interpreted. The warmth of contact activates sensory pathways that compete with pain, softening its edges. Oxytocin releases. The nervous system, feeling less alone, begins to ease. There is something ancient in this. Long before medicine, long before language had words for what hurt, the instinct to reach towards someone in pain was already there. The body knew, before the mind could explain it, that touch was a kind of answer. And touch, it seems, can reach even deeper than comfort. In one study, couples who held hands during a painful experience didn't just report feeling better, their brain waves began to move together. Two nervous systems, through the simple act of contact, beginning to synchronize, as though the boundary between one person and another became, for a moment, slightly less fixed. Scientists are still exploring exactly what this means, but there is something in it that feels, somehow, right. That in the moments when we most need steadying, the presence of someone else, the physical fact of them, close and real, can reach past words, past thought, and touch something the isolated self cannot quite reach on its own. Even as you rest right now, if someone is near, their presence is doing something, quietly, without needing to try. Yawning too moves between people without effort or intention. One person yawns, and across the room, unbidden, another follows. Then, another. A soft wave of shared biology, passing through a group like a gentle signal. And this contagion crosses species. Chimpanzees catch yawns from humans, dogs from their owners, some birds from members of their flock. Psychologists believe it is tied to empathy, to the ancient, wordless tendency to synchronize with those around us. The more emotionally close two people are, the more likely one is to catch the other's yawn. Strangers rarely trigger it. Friends almost always do. It is one of the quieter reminders that we are not sealed off from each other, that something passes between living things, some rhythm, some attunement that doesn't require language or even awareness to move. Laughter moves the same way and leaves something behind when it does. When we laugh genuinely, freely, the brain releases endorphins, the same chemicals that respond to physical exertion and deep rest. Stress hormones fall. The body shifts into a state that is measurably different from the one it was in a moment before. And that state, researchers have found, can persist. Repeated laughter, over time, trains the nervous system to recover from stress more easily, as though joy, practiced, becomes a skill. This is not about forcing cheerfulness. It is about what happens in the body when something genuinely delights us. The exhale, the loosening, the momentary dissolution of whatever had been held tight. Laughter is the body's permission to put something down, just for a moment, and feel the relief of it. And kindness, offered outward, freely, without calculation, leaves something behind in the giver as well. Studies have found that people who help others regularly show lower blood pressure, stronger immune function, and reduced levels of stress hormones. Oxytocin releases. The cardiovascular system steadies. The body responds to generosity as though it were nourishment. This makes a particular kind of sense. We evolved in small groups where the survival of one was threaded through the survival of others. Caring for someone else was never separate from caring for yourself. The biology of kindness didn't distinguish between the two. It still doesn't. Every small generous act, a door held, a meal brought, a moment of genuine attention moves through the body like a quiet tide. Doing good, it seems, is one of the more effective ways of feeling well. And the brain, when it receives that generosity, when it hears sincere praise, or is met with real acknowledgement, lights up in the same regions activated by winning a prize or receiving an unexpected gift. Compliments land in the reward circuitry. Dopamine releases. A warm, motivating current moves through the system. Not flattery, not performance. The real thing, the moment when someone sees something true about you and says so. That lands differently. It reaches past the social surface and touches something that needed to know it was visible. We are, all of us, quietly hoping to be seen. And when we are, when it happens simply and genuinely, the brain registers it as a kind of abundance. A signal that says, asterisk, you belong here. You are enough. Rest. Asterisk. There is a strange thing that happens when people gather. Individually, most of us carry a reliable instinct toward helping, a pull toward someone who needs assistance that feels immediate and personal. But place a crowd around that same moment of need, and something shifts. The responsibility, once clear and individual, begins to diffuse. Each person glances at the others. Each assumes someone else will move first. And sometimes, in that shared hesitation, no one moves at all. Psychologists call this the bystander effect. And it is not cruelty. It is not indifference. It is something more subtle. The way the presence of others can make individual responsibility feel less urgent, less certain, less entirely yours. The crowd, without intending to, becomes a kind of permission to wait. But knowing this changes it. The person who understands this tendency is more likely to act anyway, to step forward. Not because it is easy, but because they know that in a crowd, the first step belongs to whoever decides to take it. Stress, meanwhile, moves through a room in ways we don't always see. When the body is under pressure, it releases chemical compounds through sweat, subtle signals that carry information about the internal state. And those around us, even without conscious awareness, receive them. Brain regions linked to empathy and vigilance activate. A faint alertness rises. The nervous system, without being told anything, begins to prepare. This is ancient. In the small groups where we evolved, stress spreading quickly through a community could mean the difference between safety and danger. A single person's alarm could bring the whole group to readiness before anyone had seen what was wrong. The mechanism still runs, which means that the tension we carry into a room does not stay ours alone. It moves. It touches the people nearest to us, adjusting their inner weather without a word being exchanged. But calm moves the same way. This is the part that is easy to forget and worth remembering. The same pathways that carry stress between people carry steadiness just as readily. A person who has found their own stillness, who breathes slowly, who moves without urgency, who speaks in a voice that has room in it, changes something in the air around them. Not through effort, not through instruction, simply through being genuinely at ease. The nervous systems nearby receive this too. They attune, they soften slightly, without knowing why. We are always, whether we know it or not, contributing to the emotional climate of the spaces we inhabit. And the quietest, most consistent gift we can offer the people around us is the quality of our own presence. There is a warmth that memory can generate that has no external source. When researchers asked participants to recall cherished moments from their past, a childhood afternoon, a gathering of people they loved, a time of particular safety, something unexpected happened. Perceived body temperature rose. Participants reported feeling physically warmer in rooms that had not changed temperature at all. The brain, flooded with the chemistry of remembered belonging, told the body it was somewhere safe and warm, and the body, faithfully, believed it. This is nostalgia, not merely as sentiment, but as physiology, a reaching backward that the body experiences as a rival, as though the past, when we return to it gently, can still offer something real, still hold us, briefly, in the warmth of what once was, and warmth of a different kind, a warmth that reaches forward rather than back, seems to extend life itself. People who report a strong sense of purpose, a clear and personal reason for the days they are living, show measurably lower levels of inflammatory markers in their blood. They recover from illness more readily. They sleep more deeply. They live, on average, longer. The purpose doesn't need to be grand. It does not need to involve the world stage or lasting legacy. It can be as particular and quiet as tending a garden, raising a child, creating something with your hands, showing up reliably for the people who need you. The body responds to meaning. It is as though the cells themselves can sense whether the life they are sustaining has somewhere it is going, and when it does, they hold on a little longer, a little more willingly, to the work of being alive. Optimism, too, reaches into the body in ways that once seemed implausible and are now documented with quiet regularity. People who carry a genuine expectation that things can improve, not naive denial, but a settled belief that difficulty is survivable and the future holds possibility, recover faster from surgery. They respond more consistently to treatment. Their immune systems show measurable differences from those of people who have given up on the outcome before it arrives. Part of this is behavioral. Optimistic people tend to follow medical advice more carefully, persist through rehabilitation, maintain the habits that support healing. But part of it is something more direct, an effect on the stress response, on inflammation, on the quiet biological work the body does when it believes the effort is worth making. Hope, held sincerely, is not nothing. It is something the body can feel. And sometimes what the body feels, in the aftermath of something very hard, is not only damage. There is a phenomenon that researchers have named post-traumatic growth, the emergence, in some people who have survived great difficulty, of something that wasn't there before. Greater empathy, a deeper appreciation for what remains, a clarity about what truly matters that the ordinary, undisturbed days had never quite produced. This is not the same as saying trauma is good. It is not. The storm is real, and the cost is real, and no one would choose it. But the tree that survives a storm sometimes grows more deeply rooted than one that has stood only in still air. The hardship in some people becomes the ground from which something unexpected grows. The mind is more resilient than it knows. Even in its most broken places, it carries the capacity to find its way toward light. Resilience, it turns out, can also be practiced in small ways in the ordinary moments when we are faced with something difficult and choose, deliberately, to look at it differently. Psychologists call this cognitive reappraisal, the act of shifting the meaning we assign to a situation, viewing a challenge as an opportunity, seeing an ending as the beginning of something not yet known. Brain scans show what happens when this shift occurs. The prefrontal cortex becomes more active. The amygdala, the brain's fear and alarm center, quiets. The body, following the mind's reinterpretation, begins to ease. The same event, held in a different frame, produces a genuinely different biological response. We are not simply at the mercy of what happens to us. Between what occurs and how we feel about it, there is a space. Small, sometimes, difficult to find, sometimes, but there, and within that space lives one of the stranger, more beautiful discoveries in modern psychology. A placebo, an inactive treatment, a sugar pill, a saline injection can produce real, measurable healing. This has been known for decades. But what researchers discovered more recently is more surprising still. The placebo effect can work even when the person taking it knows it is a placebo. Participants told plainly times this is an inactive pill. It contains no medicine times, and who took it anyway showed genuine reductions in pain, real changes in mood, measurable physiological shifts. The knowledge that it wasn't real did not dismantle the effect. Something in the ritual, the act of being cared for, the expectation of relief, the body's own deep pharmacopoeia activated anyway, as though the mind's participation in healing matters independently of whether it has been deceived. Because belief, it seems, is not merely psychological. It reaches into the body and adjusts things. Expectation shapes the stress response. Anticipation of relief can trigger actual relief. The story we tell ourselves about what is happening to us becomes, in measurable ways, part of what is happening to us. This is not mysticism. It is biology. The biology of a system so integrated, so thoroughly woven together, that the mind's interpretation of an event changes the body's experience of it. The physician who says times you will feel better soon times is not only offering comfort, they may be offering medicine. What we believe shapes what we feel, and what we feel shapes what we heal. Sleep, it turns out, has its own relationship with belief. In a study that still feels quietly astonishing, participants who were told they had experienced above-average sleep quality performed better on cognitive tests the following morning, regardless of how they had actually slept. The expectation of rest produced something resembling the effects of rest. The brain, informed that it had recovered, behaved as though it had. This is not an invitation to deceive yourself about sleep, which the body genuinely needs in ways no belief can fully replace. But it reveals something worth sitting with, that the story we carry into the morning shapes the morning, that how we narrate our own recovery is not separate from the recovery itself. The mind is always, in some quiet way, listening to what we tell it about itself. And the body is always listening to the mind's other voices too, including the ones that live in posture. The way you hold yourself right now, the angle of your shoulders, the openness or closure of your chest, the tilt of your head, these are not merely the body's passive response to how you feel. They participate in creating it. Upright posture increases alertness and a quiet sense of agency. A collapsed posture can deepen fatigue and low mood. The feedback runs in both directions, constantly. Researchers have found that even small postural adjustments, sitting taller, releasing the shoulders downward, allowing the chest to open slightly, can shift hormone levels and alter the quality of thought within minutes. The body is not waiting for the mind to feel better before it adjusts. It is offering, always, to lead. Right now, as you lie still, your body is already doing something kind for your mind. letting it down gently into rest. And when the mind needs to process something it cannot yet speak, something too large or too tangled for ordinary conversation, writing offers a different kind of release. Not polished writing, not writing for an audience, but the private, honest, sometimes incoherent act of putting feeling into words on a page. Studies have found that people who write expressively about difficult emotions show lower blood pressure, stronger immune function, improved sleep, and a greater sense of psychological clarity in the weeks that follow. Something about the act of translating the formless into language, of giving shape to what had been shapeless, reduces its weight. The page becomes a container. What had been pressing inward from all directions finds edges, and in finding edges, becomes manageable. The mind was not built to hold everything in silence. Sometimes it needs somewhere to put what it's carrying. There is a small, easily dismissed habit that turns out to support focus in a way that seems almost too simple to be true. Doodling, the idle, repetitive, apparently purposeless marks people make during meetings and lectures and long phone calls, has been shown to improve memory retention. In one study, people who doodled while listening to a dull recording remembered significantly more of its content than those who simply sat and listened. The reason seems to be that doodling occupies just enough of the brain's restless peripheral attention to prevent full daydreaming, while leaving the main channel free to receive information. It fills the gap where the wandering mind would otherwise go, not demanding enough to compete, just engaging enough to keep the system anchored. The idle hand, it turns out, is sometimes helping in ways the focused mind cannot quite manage on its own. And then there are the moments when focus becomes something else entirely, when the task and the person doing it seem to dissolve into each other, and time stops behaving the way time usually behaves. Athletes describe it, musicians describe it. Anyone who has been deeply absorbed in work they love has likely felt its edges. Psychologists call it flow state, in which the challenge of what you're doing precisely matches your capacity to meet it, and the result is a quality of effortless engagement that feels like nothing else. The prefrontal cortex, the region most associated with self-monitoring and self-consciousness, quiets. The internal narrator steps back. What remains is just the doing, clean and unencumbered. Hours pass. The world outside the task becomes very far away, and when you surface, you feel not drained but strangely replenished, as though the deep immersion itself was a form of rest. Tiredness, in smaller doses, can open a different kind of door. When the mind is mildly fatigued, its filtering mechanisms loosen slightly. The usual editorial voice that evaluates and discards and insists on staying within familiar patterns, that voice grows quieter, and in the space its quieting creates, unusual connections surface. Ideas that a fully alert, fully guarded mind might never have allowed. This is why some people find their most surprising thoughts arriving late at night, or in the soft haze between sleeping and waking. Not because exhaustion is useful, it isn't, not in its full form, but because that gentle loosening of control creates conditions where the mind can surprise itself. Creativity, it seems, sometimes needs the guard to step away, just briefly, just enough for something unexpected to slip through. Memory, meanwhile, rewards a particular kind of patience. Spreading learning across time, returning to something today, and then again in 3 days, and then again in a week, builds retention far more durably than any amount of concentrated cramming. Each return strengthens the pathway. Each small act of forgetting, followed by retrieval, deepens the trace. This is the spacing effect, and it works because memory is not a vault where things are placed and kept. It is more like a path through a field walked once. It is faint. Walked again and again, it becomes clear. Walked regularly, it becomes something you could follow in the dark. The mind doesn't ask for intensity, it asks for return, for the gentle, repeated gesture of coming back. And one of the most powerful ways to return to something is to explain it to someone else. Teaching, even informally, even imperfectly, even in a conversation that wanders, requires the brain to retrieve what it knows and reorganize it into a form another person can follow. That reorganization is itself a deepening. The gaps reveal themselves, the vague edges sharpen. What had been loosely held becomes, through the act of explaining, more firmly yours. Psychologists call this the protégé effect, and its implications are quietly generous. Understanding grows not only by receiving, but by giving. The teacher, in the act of teaching, learns something the student never witnesses, the way explaining clarifies, the way the information becomes more alive, through the effort of passing it on. Knowledge shared is knowledge strengthened. Even before the explanation, something helpful is already happening. Simply preparing to teach, organizing what you know in anticipation of passing it along, improves recall of that material, even if the teaching moment never arrives. The intention of sharing activates a more structured engagement with the information. The brain shifts from passive holding to active preparation, and in that shift, the material settles more deeply. There is something in this that extends beyond studying. The habit of thinking, asterisk, how would I explain this to someone I care about? Asterisk, that single reorientation changes how we hold what we know. It makes knowledge warmer, more available, more human. Information we intend to share lives differently in us than information we intend only to keep. Writing by hand slowly, with a pen on paper, engages the brain in a way that typing, for all its efficiency, does not quite replicate. The fine motor movements involved in forming letters activate multiple regions simultaneously. The slower pace creates space for processing. The visual and spatial experience of seeing words form beneath the hand leaves a richer sensory trace than the uniform tap of keys. Students who take handwritten notes tend to remember the material more deeply, even when they write less of it, because the constraint of handwriting forces active summarizing, which is itself a form of encoding. The hand, moving slowly across the page, is doing something the typing fingers are not. It is thinking. In a world that prizes speed, there is still something the unhurried hand knows that the quick mind sometimes misses. Where we are, when we learn something, becomes, quietly, a part of what we learn. The lighting in the room, the sounds drifting in from outside, the particular quality of the air, all of it is woven into the memory alongside the information itself. The brain does not store content in isolation. It stores context. And later, when we try to retrieve what we learned, those contextual threads become pathways back. This is why studying in different places, a quiet room one day, a park bench the next, a library the day after, can make information stick more firmly than studying always in the same spot. Each location adds another thread, another angle of approach. When the moment of recall comes, you have more ways in. The world, it turns out, is always participating in our learning. Every place we sit with something we are trying to understand becomes part of understanding it. And within any sequence of learning or experience, or simply a day lived, the beginning and the end hold a particular brightness. The first things encountered receive extra attention, extra rehearsal, extra time in the mind's front room before being filed away. The last things remain fresh, glowing briefly in short-term memory before the interval carries them forward or lets them fade. Everything in between, the long middle stretch of an afternoon, the middle chapters, the conversations that neither opened nor closed the evening, tends to be held less clearly. Not because it mattered less, but because the mind naturally frames experience this way, giving the opening and the closing scenes the most light. This is true of days, of relationships, of lives. We tend to remember how things began and how they ended. The middle, even when it was the largest part, becomes a softer country. The brain, despite its extraordinary capabilities, misses things. Large things, sometimes. Things happening directly in front of it. If a change occurs during a moment of distraction, a brief glance away, a blink, a sudden visual interruption, the brain can fail entirely to register that anything has altered. Objects change. People change. Entire features of a scene rearrange. And the eye, returning, sees nothing different because the brain has quietly assumed continuity. This is change blindness, and it is not a flaw so much as a feature, the inevitable consequence of a system that cannot process everything, and so processes selectively. The brain attends to what it expects and fills the rest in with confident prediction. What this means, gently, is that the world as we experience it is always partly invented, not falsely but helpfully, automatically, without our asking. We see a complete and stable reality because the brain insists on completing it, whether or not the raw data quite supports that. Perception, in this way, is less like a camera and more like a storyteller. The eyes receive light, the brain makes meaning, and between those two steps, an extraordinary amount of interpretation occurs, shaping, filling, predicting, correcting, so that by the time experience arrives in awareness, it has already been edited into something coherent. Optical illusions work because they catch this editing in the act. They present the brain with information that resists the usual shortcuts, forcing contradictions between what is there and what the mind insists must be there. The image that appears to move, the lines that look unequal but are not, the color that shifts depending on what surrounds it. These moments of visual confusion are not errors. They are windows, brief, clear views of the machinery that runs, always just beneath the surface of what we call seeing. Even the gap in your own vision, the place where the optic nerve meets the retina, where there are no light-sensing cells at all, goes entirely unnoticed. Right now, in both of your eyes, there is a region of genuine blindness, a small area that receives no visual information, and yet you see no hole, no darkness, no interruption in the continuous field of your experience. The brain fills it in, seamlessly, without hesitation, using the surrounding information to paint over the gap. What you experience as an unbroken visual world contains, always, at least two small inventions, places where the mind has quietly decided what should be there and rendered it, with perfect confidence, as though it had actually seen. We are, in the most literal sense, partly dreaming, even while awake. And the brain can go further still. People who wear glasses that invert their vision, turning the world literally upside down, experience, at first, profound disorientation. The floor is above them, the sky is below. Everything familiar has been placed somewhere wrong, but within days, something remarkable begins to happen. The brain, refusing to accept the inversion, begins to reinterpret the incoming signal. The world starts to feel right side up again. Objects return to where they belong, not because anything has changed, but because the brain has restructured its understanding of the data it is receiving. When the glasses are removed, the disorientation returns briefly, until the brain readjusts once more. This is neuroplasticity at its most vivid, the brain not merely adapting to new information, but rewriting what reality feels like in order to accommodate it. The mind's commitment to making sense of the world is, apparently, almost without limit. Mood, meanwhile, reaches into perception in quieter ways that are easy to miss, precisely because they feel like simply seeing clearly. People in a positive, emotional state perceive a wider range of colors. They notice more peripheral detail. Their visual field, in a measurable sense, expands. People in an anxious or fearful state show the opposite, a narrowing of attention, a tunnel that focuses on potential threats and filters out much of the neutral, beautiful, unremarkable world surrounding them. The same street, walked in joy and walked in fear, is genuinely seen differently. The same sky contains more or less color depending on who is looking up at it and what they are carrying. What we feel is not separate from what we see. It is part of the apparatus through which seeing happens. And what we carry, always, is a persistent, quiet belief that others are watching us more closely than they are. Psychologists call this the spotlight effect, the tendency to imagine ourselves at the center of a kind of invisible audience, a crowd of observers who notice our mistakes, our stumbles, the small awkwardnesses that feel, from inside, like enormous and obvious failures. But most people, most of the time, are not watching. They are occupied with their own inner noise, their own unresolved loops, their own version of the same quiet self-consciousness. The spotlight we imagine trained on us is largely of our own construction. The audience, mostly, is not there. Knowing this can feel like setting something down, like realizing that the performance you've been giving, anxiously, for years, has been playing to an empty house, and that the empty house is actually a relief. The brain remembers, more readily than almost anything else, what other people have done. Stories about behavior, who said what, who acted how, who can be trusted, and who has shown themselves not to be, are stored with a vividness and durability that neutral facts rarely achieve. Gossip, in this sense, is not merely social weakness. It is the operation of a memory system finely tuned to the information that mattered most in the environments where we evolved. In small groups, where your survival was threaded through the actions and intentions of the people around you, knowing who was generous and who was not, who kept their word and who did not, this was not idle information. It was essential. The brain treated it accordingly, and still does. The stories we tell about each other are held more firmly than almost any fact we learn from a book. The social world has always been, for the human mind, the most important world there is. We track each other, it follows, with remarkable precision. The brain has evolved a quiet, running ledger, a continuous record of who has given, who has taken, who has behaved in ways that strengthen the group, and who has undermined it. This tracking happens largely without conscious effort, woven into the texture of social perception so thoroughly that we often experience its outputs not as analysis but as feeling. The slight wariness towards someone you cannot quite explain. The immediate ease with a stranger who reminds you, without your knowing why, of someone trustworthy. The sense arriving before any reasoning that something in a situation is off. These are not random. They are the outputs of a system that has been running, refining itself, for an extraordinarily long time. The social instincts we carry are not primitive in the dismissive sense. They are ancient in the generous one, honed across thousands of generations of people learning, slowly, what it means to live well together. The brain finds faces everywhere. In the grain of wood, in the shadows cast by streetlights, in the random arrangements of clouds drifting across an evening sky. 2 dots and a curve, arranged just so. And something ancient in the visual system responds a flicker of recognition, a readiness, a leaning toward. Psychologists call this pareidolia, and it is not a glitch. It is the inevitable consequence of a system so finely tuned to finding faces that it occasionally finds them where none exist. For most of human history, failing to recognize a face, missing the presence of another person or another creature before they recognized you, carried real consequences. The brain learned, across enormous stretches of time, to err on the side of seeing, to find the face in the shadow rather than miss it. And so we live in a world quietly populated with accidental faces, looking back at us from unexpected places, as though the world itself were paying attention. And when a real face appears, the recognition is extraordinarily fast. Before a name surfaces, before memory has located who this person is or where you know them from, the face itself has already been identified. In less than a second, the brain has processed the arrangement of features, matched it against its internal archive, and returned a result. The name may take another moment, but the face is known almost instantly. This speed reflects how much the brain has invested in this particular skill. An entire region of the temporal lobe, the fusiform face area, is dedicated almost exclusively to the task. Damage to this region produces a condition called prosopagnosia, in which faces lose their legibility entirely. A person may see every feature clearly and still be unable to recognize their closest friend. The features arrive, but the identity does not. The face becomes a collection of parts that never quite assembles into a person. What we experience as simple and automatic looking at someone and knowing them is, beneath the surface, something the brain works very hard to provide. That dedicated face network, it turns out, can be recruited for other purposes. People who spend years working closely with animals often develop a sharpened ability to read the faces of those animals, to recognize individual sheep in a flock, to distinguish the expressions of dogs with remarkable precision. Bird enthusiasts learn to identify species by subtle arrangements of features that others would find indistinguishable. The brain lends its face processing machinery to whatever repeated, socially significant recognition the life demands of it. The system does not insist on human faces. It insists on the faces that matter, whatever form those happen to take. Connection, in this sense, reshapes the very architecture of perception. What we love, we learn to see more clearly. And your own name, spoken anywhere in the vicinity, cuts through almost any level of noise. A crowded room, a busy street, a conversation in which you are only half present, and then, from somewhere across the noise, your name. And suddenly, you are entirely present. The distraction clears. The other voices recede. Something in the auditory system has been waiting all along for exactly that signal. This is the cocktail party effect, named for the situation in which it is most often noticed, and brain imaging confirms what the experience suggests. Hearing your own name activates the medial prefrontal cortex, a region deeply involved in self-referential thought. The brain doesn't just notice your name, it responds to it as though it were, in some essential way, about you, because it is. Your name is one of the oldest and most personal signals the brain has learned to recognize. It has been your signal since before you understood language. Something in you has always known it was yours. A face encountered for the first time is already being evaluated before conscious thought has time to weigh in. In under 100 milliseconds, far less than the time it takes to blink, the brain has formed an impression. Trustworthy or not, approachable or not, safe or not. These assessments arrive as feelings, as gut responses, before any deliberate consideration has occurred. The amygdala is central to this speed. It processes social threat with urgency, reading faces for information about what this person's presence might mean. And while these rapid impressions can be surprisingly consistent across different observers, many people, independently, forming the same first sense of the same face, they are not always accurate. They are fast, and fast is not the same as right. The first draft of a person that the brain produces in under a second is worth holding lightly, with the awareness that the fuller portrait takes much longer to develop, and the brain can be influenced, its behavior quietly adjusted by things it never consciously registered at all. An image of eyes placed near a donation box or an honesty jar increases contributions and reduces dishonesty. The eyes do not need to be realistic. Even simple, stylized representations are enough. The brain detects the suggestion of being observed and responds automatically by becoming slightly more careful, more generous, more aligned with the version of itself it would want a witness to see. This is not cynicism about human nature. It is something more interesting. The social self, the self that exists in relation to others, that cares about being seen well, is so fundamental to who we are that even the hint of observation reaches it. The impression of eyes on a piece of paper touches something that evolved over millennia in communities where being watched by others was the constant condition of a human life. We are, at our core, creatures shaped by the presence of each other. Even a drawn gaze carries weight. Words flash too briefly to see consciously can still leave a trace. Stimuli presented below the threshold of awareness too fast, too faint, too peripheral, are not processed by the part of the mind that notices and reflects, but they are processed. The brain receives them, categorizes them, and allows them to tilt what comes after. A word associated with warmth, presented subliminally, makes the next image seem slightly warmer. A word associated with threat makes the next ambiguous expression seem slightly more hostile. The effect is subtle. It does not override conscious judgment, but it exists, a quiet influence running beneath awareness, nudging the emotional coloring of experience in directions the conscious mind never chose. We are affected by more than we register. The world reaches us through channels we don't know are open, and leaves impressions we attribute to ourselves. And it is not only words. Everything in the environment we inhabit is quietly shaping us. The images on the walls, the pace of the music playing in the background, the scents drifting through a space, the words on the signs we pass without reading. Each element sets a stage, primes a state, prepares the mind to think in certain directions rather than others. Walking into a library quiets something. Walking into a busy marketplace accelerates something. A room with high ceilings encourages more expansive, abstract thinking. A room that smells faintly of cleaning products nudges people, without their awareness, toward tidier behavior. We move through environments that are constantly speaking to us, in a language below language, and the mind, faithful student that it is always listening. But even when the environment speaks clearly, people will sometimes deny what they plainly perceive in order to agree with those around them. In the famous experiments of Solomon Asch, participants were shown lines of obviously different lengths and asked to identify which matched. When the others in the room who were part of the experiment unanimously gave the wrong answer, a significant portion of the real participants agreed with them. Not because they couldn't see the difference, but because the pull towards social harmony was, in that moment, stronger than the pull toward accuracy. Conformity is not weakness. It is an ancient strategy for belonging. In small communities, standing apart from the group carried real costs. Agreement was often survival. The instinct to align, to match, to not be the dissenting voice, this is old, and it runs deep. But it can carry us away from what we actually know. And knowing it runs in us is, perhaps, the beginning of being able to choose differently when it matters most. The mind does not passively receive information. It reaches toward it, shaped by what it has recently encountered. Exposure to certain words, images, or ideas creates a readiness, a priming that influences how subsequent information is interpreted. Read words associated with slowness, and your walking pace may imperceptibly decrease. Encounter images of achievement, and your persistence on a difficult task may quietly increase. These effects are brief. They fade. They do not determine behavior so much as lean it in one direction rather than another. But they remind us that the mind arriving at any moment is not a neutral instrument. It is a mind already in motion, already colored by what it has just passed through, already tilting towards something. Every experience leaves a residue, and that residue, however faint, is part of what we bring to what comes next. There is a particular gravity to the opinions of a group that has nothing to do with whether those opinions are correct. When everyone around us seems to hold the same view, something shifts in how that view feels, not just socially, but epistemically. It begins to feel more likely to be true, more reasonable, more obviously right. The unanimity of others becomes, without our choosing it, a kind of evidence. This is conformity at its quietest, not the dramatic capitulation of someone who knows they are wrong and agrees anyway, but the subtler drift of someone who genuinely begins to feel less certain of what they thought they knew. The group doesn't argue. It simply agrees, and the weight of that agreement presses gently on the edges of individual judgment until the edges soften. Awareness of this helps. Knowing that the feeling of consensus is not the same as the fact of correctness creates a small but meaningful space room, enough to ask, quietly, what you actually think before deciding whether you agree. And groups, when they discuss things together, tend to move toward more extreme positions than any individual member held going in. This is group polarization, the amplification of shared tendencies through the reinforcing feedback of collective discussion. People who lean cautious together become more cautious. People who lean bold together become bolder. The shared direction gets magnified rather than moderated. This happens partly because in a group discussion, the arguments you hear most frequently are the ones that align with the dominant view. Dissenting voices are quieter, less confident, more likely to stay silent. And so, the conversation feels more one-sided than the room actually is, and the conclusions land further along the spectrum than anyone quite intended. The most useful thing a group can sometimes do is pause, to ask not only what we agree on, but what we might be missing. Authority, too, can move ordinary people in directions they would not travel alone. In the 1960s, Stanley Milgram demonstrated that participants would administer what they believed were serious electric shocks to strangers, simply because a figure in a white coat told them to continue. Most of them were visibly uncomfortable. Many asked to stop, but most continued. This is not a portrait of cruelty. It is a portrait of deference, the deeply human tendency to trust that those above us in a hierarchy know something we don't, and that following their instruction releases us, somehow, from the full weight of what we are doing. The obedience was not enthusiastic. It was reluctant, uncomfortable, and real. Awareness, again, is the only counter. The person who knows that authority can override personal judgment is more likely to notice when it is doing so, and more likely to find, in that noticing, a moment of genuine choice. Below the level of conscious reasoning, the brain holds associations that run faster and deeper than deliberate thought. These implicit biases, automatic links between categories of people and qualities like warmth or competence, threat or familiarity, were formed through accumulated exposure, through the subtle patterns of a lifetime of experience, through the images and stories and silences that surrounded us as we grew. They are not who we are in the sense of what we choose, but they influence what we perceive, who we trust, how long we look, what we assume. They shape the margins of behavior in ways that can accumulate into significant consequences, especially for the people on the receiving end. The research suggests they are not easily dismantled, but they can be interrupted, slowed down, noticed. And in the noticing, the gap between instinct and action becomes, however briefly, a place where something more considered can occur. Something similar happens with information itself. The brain uses familiarity as a shortcut for truth. A statement encountered multiple times begins to feel more reliable, more credible, more obviously correct, not because evidence has accumulated, but because repetition alone creates a sense of recognition, and recognition feels like knowing. This is the illusory truth effect, and it operates regardless of the content being repeated. False information, repeated often enough, acquires a feeling of truth that accurate information, heard only once, may not match. The brain mistakes the ease of processing the smooth, frictionless quality of encountering something familiar for a sign that the content is reliable. In a world where some information is repeated by design, this tendency is worth knowing, not to become suspicious of everything, but to remember that feeling certain is not the same as being right. The mind can be very confident and still be wrong. Memory, too, is more fluid than it feels. Each time we recall a memory, we are not simply retrieving a stored file. We are reconstructing it, pulling threads from multiple places, reassembling the scene according to what we currently know, what we currently feel, and who we currently are. And in that reassembly, small changes can slip in, details that were never there, emotional tones that the original moment didn't quite carry, a clarity or a darkness that belongs more to now than to then. This makes memory deeply personal and also gently unreliable. Two people who shared an experience can each remember it in ways that feel completely true and that differ in ways that cannot both be accurate. Both are remembering honestly. Both are remembering the reconstruction they have, over time, assembled. What we call the past is, in part, something we are still creating. And memory is, at its most fundamental level, a story shaped by emotion, by expectation, by the self that is doing the remembering. The same events, filtered through different inner weather, become different memories. Joy and grief are not merely responses to what happened. They are part of what determines how it is stored and what it will feel like when it returns. The memories that stay most vividly are rarely the most objectively significant. They are the ones that carried the strongest feeling, The ones where something in you responded so fully that the brain marked the moment without being asked. These are the ones that surface unbidden on quiet evenings, in the middle of an ordinary afternoon, arriving without announcement, carrying a completeness that nothing else quite replicates. Memory keeps what the heart insists on keeping. Unresolved tasks keep a gentle hold on awareness, surfacing at the edges of attention until they are addressed or released. But sleep has a different kind of power over what is held and what is finally let go. During the night, the hippocampus replays the day's experiences, not randomly, but selectively, reinforcing what matters and allowing the rest to soften. The events that carried meaning are threaded more firmly into long-term storage. The rest begins to fade. This is why sleep is not a pause from learning, but a continuation of it. The consolidation that happens in the night is part of what makes the day's experience permanent. Without it, the things you encountered, the things you understood, the things you felt, they remain fragile, held only lightly, vulnerable to being lost. What the day begins, sleep completes. And sometimes in the loosened architecture of sleep, the mind finds what waking could not. Problems that had resisted every approach during the day can resolve quietly overnight, the solution arriving in the morning with a clarity that feels like it came from somewhere else. It did, in a sense, from the sleeping brain, which is freed from the constraints of linear logic and can move through associations in ways the directed, goal-oriented waking mind cannot quite allow. Artists have always known this. Scientists too. The history of insight is full of moments that came in dreams, in hypnagogic, half-sleep, in the slow drift between waking and not. The mind working without supervision finds paths the supervised mind would never think to try. Rest is not absence. It is a different kind of presence, one that the waking world rarely gives the brain permission to enter. But a single night without adequate sleep disrupts something fundamental. The hippocampus, which needs rest to consolidate what the day has brought, is impaired. New information arrives, but cannot be properly stored. The events of the following day are experienced normally, perceived, processed, responded to but not held. They pass through without leaving the impression they should. This is why sleep deprivation feels, over time, like a kind of thinning, like living in a world that doesn't quite stick. The experiences accumulate, but the memories don't, and something that should be building the layered, textured sense of a life being fully lived begins instead to blur. Sleep is not a luxury the busy mind can negotiate around. It is the condition under which the mind becomes fully itself. And within sleep, something else is quietly happening. The emotional charge of the day's difficult moments, the friction, the hurt, the anxiety that arrived and never quite resolved, is being processed. REM sleep, the stage most associated with dreaming, appears to serve as a kind of overnight emotional digestion. The events are revisited, but in a neurochemical environment stripped of the stress hormones that made them sharp. The memory of what happened is preserved. The raw edge of it is softened. This is why the same problem that felt unbearable at midnight can feel navigable by morning. Not because anything has changed, but because the sleeping brain has done something to the feeling attached to it, filed it differently, held it at a slightly greater distance, allowed the fact of it to remain while gently loosening its grip. Sleep does not erase difficulty. It helps us carry it more lightly. In certain states of sleep, when self-awareness flickers back on while the dream continues, something remarkable becomes possible. The dreamer realizes they are dreaming, and in that realization, the dream world, which had seemed as solid and inevitable as waking life, becomes something else, malleable, open to direction. A landscape that can be explored, altered, inhabited with a quality of presence that ordinary dreams don't quite allow. People who experience lucid dreams describe flying over vast landscapes, breathing underwater, walking through cities of their own invention. They describe a quality of vividness that can exceed waking experience, colors more saturated, sensations more immediate, the emotional texture of the dream world pressing close from every direction. The mind, it turns out, is capable of generating entire worlds, complete, coherent, sensory from nothing but itself. And in lucid dreaming, it becomes possible to walk through those worlds knowing, with perfect clarity, that you built them. And those dream worlds, it seems, are not entirely separate from the waking one. Research has found that skills practiced in lucid dreams, musical phrases rehearsed, athletic movements repeated, problems worked through with conscious intention, show measurable improvement in waking performance. The brain, even while dreaming, is running the relevant circuitry. The rehearsal is real, even if the stage is imaginary. This is not merely a curiosity. It is a reminder that the boundary between what happens inside and what happens outside is more permeable than it seems. The mind that imagines doing something is, in certain real and measurable ways, doing it. What we rehearse in the interior becomes part of the architecture of the possible. The dream is a kind of practice, and practice, wherever it occurs, leaves a trace. Even in the deepest sleep, something in the brain remains alert. The auditory system continues monitoring the environment, filtering the constant flow of sound for signals that matter. Most sounds are categorized as safe and allowed to pass without disturbing rest. But certain signals, a baby crying, a smoke alarm, and above all others, your own name, can cross the threshold, can reach through the layers of sleep and bring you, suddenly and completely, back. The sleeping brain is not absent from the world. It is present in a different way, selective, watchful, still connected to the people and the environment it belongs to. It rests, but it does not abandon its post. There is something quietly moving in this, even at your most unguarded, even in the state furthest from ordinary consciousness. Some part of you is still listening for what matters, still keeping watch, still, in its way, caring for the life it inhabits. Time, in waking life, moves differently depending on what fills it. Under conditions of fear or intense focus, the brain processes more sensory detail per unit of time recording, essentially, more frames per second. The result, in memory, is a moment that feels stretched, longer than the clock said, more spacious, more complete than ordinary moments. In contrast, during routine and familiar experience, the same commute, the same tasks, the same predictable sequence of events, the brain records relatively little. One moment blurs into the next. Hours pass and leave barely a trace. And looking back, the time seems to have vanished almost entirely. This asymmetry has a quiet implication. The richness of a life, measured in experienced time, is not simply the number of years lived. It is the number of moments that were genuinely new, sufficiently different from what came before to warrant the brain's full attention. Novelty does not just make life interesting, it makes it feel, in the deepest sense, longer. Childhood feels long for exactly this reason. Every experience, in those early years, is arriving for the first time. The first rainstorm, the first time you understood a joke, the first moment of recognizing yourself in someone else's story. Each of these is unprecedented, and the brain, encountering what it has never encountered before, records it in full. As the years accumulate and the world grows more familiar, less arrives as genuinely new. The brain, efficient and adaptive, invests less recording energy in what it has already categorized. And so the seasons begin to pass more quickly. The years seem to compress. Summer arrives and is suddenly almost gone. The antidote, if there is one, is a kind of deliberate openness, seeking the unfamiliar, choosing, sometimes, the longer route, allowing something to be encountered freshly, as though for the first time, because for the brain, that quality of attention is what makes a moment real enough to keep. Dividing attention between tasks, meanwhile, costs more than it saves. The brain does not truly multitask. It switches, rapidly, between competing demands, and each switch carries a cost. A brief period of reorientation, a loss of depth, a weakening of the encoding that would otherwise make the experience stick. Information encountered while attention is divided is held less firmly. The details are thinner, the edges less clear, the memory more easily confused about its own source. Over time, the habit of divided attention can make sustained focus genuinely more difficult. The neural pathways that support deep engagement growing fainter from disuse, while the pathways that support constant switching grow more insistent. The mind records a richer life when it is allowed to be fully present for it, one thing at a time. At the outer edges of the visual field, the oldest part of the seeing system is still running. Peripheral vision, handled by the rod cells in the retina's outer regions, does not offer detail or color with any precision. But it is exquisitely sensitive to motion. A shift at the very edge of what you can see will reach awareness faster than a movement directly in front of you. This is the brain's original alarm system, still functional, still scanning. Long before there were cities or screens or the particular quality of safety that comes from a locked door, the ability to detect movement at the margins, to notice the rustle before identifying the source, was one of the most vital things the visual system could offer. It still runs, this ancient watchfulness, in every person alive. The edge of vision is never quite still. Something there is always quietly watching, even when the center is absorbed in something else entirely. And hearing, even in sleep, remains connected to the world in ways vision does not. The ears cannot close. They receive what the environment offers continuously: the sounds of a house settling, the distant rhythm of traffic, the particular quality of silence that means the neighborhood is asleep. The sleeping brain sorts through all of it, categorizing, dismissing, returning to rest. But when your name enters that soundscape even softly, even from across the room, something changes. The categorization pauses. The signal is elevated. What was being filtered now demands attention. The brain, wherever it was in its own interior wandering, turns toward the sound of being called. You are never so far from yourself that your own name cannot find you. Music enters the brain through the auditory cortex but does not stay there. It spreads into motor regions that generate the impulse to move, into the limbic system where emotion lives and memory is held, into the reward circuitry that responds to the resolution of tension, the arrival of a chord that was always coming and finally comes. Rhythm and melody and harmony activate structures across the whole brain simultaneously, binding them together in a way that very few other experiences replicate. This breadth of activation is why music can reach people when almost nothing else can. In people living with Alzheimer's, where language has become unreliable and faces have grown strange. Familiar music can sometimes restore moments of clarity, lyrics remembered when names are not, melodies still navigable when ordinary conversation has become a foreign country. The music got in before the forgetting began, and went somewhere deep enough that the forgetting could not quite follow. For some people, music does not only arrive as sound, it arrives as color. A chord blooms into a particular shade of blue. A voice carries a warm amber haze at its edges. A sudden minor key brings a wash of gray that is not quite sadness but resembles it the way a shadow resembles the thing that cast it. This is synesthesia, the blending of senses at the borders, where one kind of perception spills into another. It is not a metaphor for these people. It is experience, as immediate and involuntary as the sensation of warmth from a fire. The color arrives with the sound, unbidden, consistent, as much a part of the music as the notes themselves. Neuroscientists believe it arises from increased connectivity between brain regions that most people keep more separate. The sound processing areas and the visual areas in a synesthetic brain speak to each other more freely than usual. What results is a kind of richness, a world experienced in more dimensions than the standard set, as though the senses, in some people, have decided the boundaries between them were always somewhat arbitrary. And boundaries, it turns out, are something the brain is willing to redraw when the world requires it. Humans fitted with devices that translate magnetic field data into gentle vibrations against the skin begin, over time, to develop something that functions like a new sense. At first it is information, a signal to be interpreted, but with sustained exposure, the brain begins to integrate it differently. It becomes intuitive, immediate, less like reading a dial, and more like simply knowing which way north is, the way a bird knows, the way the body knows warmth. The brain does not insist on the senses it was born with as the only senses possible. It works with what arrives. It finds a way to incorporate new streams of information into the existing fabric of perception, making them feel, eventually, as natural as breathing. We are not finished beings. The brain that reads these signals is still, always, capable of becoming something it has not yet been. Every new thing learned leaves a physical mark, not metaphorically, literally. The neurons involved in the learning strengthen their connections to each other. The synapses between them become more efficient, more reliable, more ready to fire in sequence the next time the pathway is needed. Entirely new connections can form. Regions of the brain involved in practiced skills can, over months and years, measurably increase in density. MRI studies of musicians show expanded regions devoted to finger movement and auditory processing. Studies of London taxi drivers who must hold the entire map of a vast city in memory show enlarged hippocampi. The brain, pressed into service by what the life demands of it, grows toward that demand. Learning is not only something that happens in the mind, it is something that happens to it. Every skill acquired, every concept genuinely understood, every moment of real comprehension, each leaves the brain physically different from what it was before. And meditation, the practice of returning, again and again, to the simple act of attending, leaves its own particular marks. Long-term meditators show measurable thickening in the prefrontal cortex, the region most associated with deliberate attention, emotional regulation, and considered decision-making. The amygdala, the brain's alarm center, the structure most responsible for the felt experience of fear and stress, shows reduced volume. The biological correlate of a quieter threat response, a nervous system that has been trained, through practice, toward calm. These are not the effects of decades of monasticism. Meaningful structural changes have been observed in people who meditate regularly for as little as 8 weeks. The brain responds to the practice of stillness, the way muscle responds to repeated movement, by becoming gradually more capable of what is being asked of it. Stillness, practiced, becomes a physical thing, something built into the architecture of the brain itself, waiting there even when the cushion is empty and the ordinary world has resumed. And yet, despite everything neuroscience has mapped and measured and carefully described, some regions of the brain remain without a clearly defined function. Areas that activate in certain contexts, that connect to known structures, that are clearly doing something, but whose precise role in the economy of the mind has not yet been established with any confidence. This is not a failure of the science. It is simply an accurate report of where we are. The brain is the most complex object in the known universe. The fact that we understand as much of it as we do is remarkable. The fact that we do not yet understand all of it is honest. There are rooms in the house of the mind that science has found and entered and looked around carefully and still cannot quite say what they are for, which means the full story of what we are, of what is happening inside us in every quiet moment, is still being written. At the center of the deepest remaining mystery is the question of consciousness itself. No one has yet explained, not with any framework that commands general agreement, not with any mechanism that fully satisfies how physical activity in the brain becomes the felt experience of being, how the firing of neurons becomes the sensation of warmth, how electrochemical signals become the particular quality of this moment, experienced from the inside, as yours. This is sometimes called the hard problem of consciousness, and it is hard in a way that distinguishes it from other difficult questions, not just technically difficult, requiring more data or more sophisticated instruments, but philosophically difficult in a way that makes it unclear what a complete answer would even look like. The mind wondering about itself has not yet fully explained itself, and there is something quietly wonderful in that. The universe has produced, in us, something complex enough to ask questions it cannot yet answer. The asking itself is remarkable, and the decisions we believe we are making consciously may begin before we are aware of making them. Brain imaging studies have found that neural activity predictive of a choice can be detected several seconds before the person reports becoming aware of the decision. The unconscious processes that will result in action are already in motion before the conscious mind has registered that anything is being decided. This does not dissolve the reality of choice, but it suggests that what we call deciding is the visible surface of a process that begins much deeper and earlier than it feels. Consciousness arrives at the decision, already in progress, takes ownership of it, narrates it, experiences it as freely chosen, while the deeper machinery that initiated it runs quietly in the background. We are not only the voice we hear thinking, we are also everything that runs beneath it. Attraction, too, rises from depths we cannot directly access. The qualities that draw us toward one person and not another are shaped by forces that operate entirely below conscious awareness. The symmetry of a face as a proxy for developmental health, the particular chemistry of a scent that carries information about immune system compatibility, the subtle vocal qualities that suggest vitality or safety or familiarity. These signals are processed before any deliberate assessment has begun. The sense of chemistry of something pulling in a particular direction arrives as feeling, as inexplicable rightness or wrongness, before the conscious mind has had a chance to form an opinion. We experience attraction as personal and chosen. And it is, in a sense, it belongs entirely to us, arises from the whole of our biology and history. But it is not chosen in the way we choose a route or a meal. It arrives, already formed, already certain, and the conscious mind, encountering it, calls it by the name of something it found. In certain states during near-death experiences, deep meditation, or through specific patterns of brain stimulation, people sometimes report the vivid, unmistakable sensation of having left the body, of looking down at themselves from above, of existing, temporarily, as something that is not located in the physical form that has, until that moment, seemed entirely coextensive with the self. Neuroscientists have traced these experiences to disruptions in the temporal parietal junction, a region involved in integrating information about the body's position in space. When this integration is interrupted, the brain's construction of the self as a bounded, located thing becomes temporarily unstable, and the result, from the inside, can feel like liberation, like the self, briefly, discovering that it is larger than the body it usually inhabits. Whether that feeling points to something real beyond the brain's own machinery is a question science has not answered. But the experience itself is real, vivid, transforming, and quietly insistent in what it suggests about the nature of what we are. Some fears arrive without being earned, without a single frightening experience to explain them. The fear of heights, in a person who has never fallen, the instinctive recoil from a snake in someone who has never been harmed by one. These responses come pre-loaded tendencies, inherited not from personal history, but from the vastly longer history of the species, encoded across generations of ancestors for whom these fears were not irrational but life-saving. Evolutionary psychologists call these prepared fears, responses the nervous system learns more quickly and unlearns more slowly than fears of objects that posed no ancestral threat. A person conditioned to fear a flower and a person conditioned to fear a spider will lose the flower fear more easily. The spider fear, rooted in something older and deeper, resists. We carry, in our nervous systems, the accumulated cautions of people who lived and died in worlds very different from this one. Their fears, passed forward, still whisper in us ancient warnings from lives we did not live, for dangers most of us will never face. Fear observed is fear transmitted. Watching someone recoil from something, seeing the widening of the eyes, the slight backward lean, the quality of held breath that fear produces in the body is enough to prime the same response in the observer. The brain's mirror systems, which simulate the inner states of others as a way of understanding them, do not stop at intellectual comprehension. They go further. They begin to prepare the body for what the other body is responding to, as though the threat, being real to them, might be real to you as well. This is learning without experience. The nervous system taking in information through the body of another person and filing it, carefully, under things to be wary of. It is how the knowledge of danger traveled through communities long before language could carry it, not in words, but in posture, in expression, in the quality of someone's sudden stillness. We are, still, porous to each other in this way. The inner states of those around us move through the space between us more readily than we tend to imagine. And forgetting, which can feel like loss, is also a form of care. The brain does not discard memories carelessly. It prunes them with a kind of wisdom, allowing what is least current, least useful, least integrated into who we are becoming, to soften and fade, making room. keeping the system flexible, responsive, capable of learning what is new, rather than remaining rigidly entangled in every detail of what was. A mind that forgot nothing would not be a superior mind. It would be an overwhelmed one, unable to generalize from experience, because every specific instance would crowd out the pattern, unable to move forward because every previous version of every situation would press equally on the present one. Forgetting is how the mind stays young enough to keep learning. It is not failure. It is the quiet, necessary work of a system that knows it must travel light, and one day, perhaps, specific memories will be able to be selectively softened, their emotional charge reduced, their grip on the present loosened through targeted interference, with the process by which memories are restored each time they are recalled. In animals, this has already been achieved. In humans, the research continues, careful and slow, carrying with it questions that science alone cannot answer. Because memories, even painful ones, are not only burdens, they are also part of the architecture of the self. The things that hurt us have shaped us, sometimes in ways that became our greatest strengths. The question of what we would be without certain memories, whether the relief would be worth the alteration, is one that touches something close to the center of what it means to be a person. The possibility of rewriting the past raises the deepest questions about identity, about whether who we are is separable from what we have survived. The thoughts you are having right now, and the ones you had this morning, and will have again tomorrow are, most of them, thoughts you have had before. Research suggests that the vast majority of daily mental content is recycled. Familiar concerns in familiar forms, the same worries, wearing slightly different clothes, the same questions asked from slightly different angles, without quite arriving at new answers. This is not a criticism of the mind. It is a description of how efficiency works, the brain favoring well-worn pathways because they are easier to travel, returning to established concerns because they are unresolved and therefore still present, cycling through the known rather than expending the energy required to venture genuinely elsewhere. But the brain is also capable of surprise, of the sudden, unprovoked arrival of something genuinely new, a connection never made before, a question that reframes everything that came before it. These moments cannot be forced, but they can be invited by rest, by novelty, by the willingness to encounter the familiar as though it was strange. And beneath all the thought, beneath the cycling and the wondering and the quiet, unresolved loops of a day lived forward, beneath everything the mind does that we can name and measure and study, there remains something that has not yet been explained. The bare fact of experience itself, the irreducible reality of there being something it is like to be you, right now, in this moment, aware of the weight of your own body and the particular quality of the air and the soft, receding edge of the day. No map of the brain, however detailed, has yet located where that experience lives. No equation has captured it. No model has reproduced it. The mind, looking inward at itself, finds, at the center of everything, something it cannot quite see directly, something that is doing the looking. This is not a failure of understanding. It is simply where we are. Standing at the edge of the largest question, the universe has yet produced a question asked by the very thing it is asking about. And even now, as the day releases its hold, and the body begins its long descent into rest, the brain continues. It does not pause. It does not power down in any simple sense. The activity shifts, patterns change, priorities rearrange. The work of the waking mind gives way to the different, deeper work of sleep. But something is always happening, always tending. always quietly in motion on your behalf. Right now, as you rest, your brain is doing something with this day, sorting through what arrived, deciding, in ways you will never consciously witness, what to keep and what to let go, weaving the hours into the longer fabric of a life, filing the feelings in the places where feelings go, softening the ones that were sharp, holding the ones that were luminous just a little longer, before they too settle into the vast interior archive of everything you have ever experienced. You do not have to help. It knows what it is doing. It has always known. The most repeated thought of any given day is, for most people, some version of a worry about the future or a regret about the past. The mind moves forward and backward in time, with a fluency that no other creature seems to share, projecting, anticipating, reviewing, revising. This capacity is extraordinary. It allows planning, empathy, storytelling, the whole architecture of a human life lived with intention. But it also means the present moment is often the place the mind visits least. The now, this breath, this weight, this specific quality of this particular evening passes largely unattended, while the mind ranges across time, doing the work it was shaped to do. There is something worth resting in the simple fact of right now, not as a discipline, not as a correction, just as a noticing. You are here. The day is ending. Something in you is already beginning to let go. Teaching deepens what we know. Kindness heals what we carry. Sleep completes what the day began. These are not separate discoveries. They are facets of the same underlying truth that we are not isolated systems, sealed off from each other and from the world. We are permeable, responsive, shaped by contact, by the voices that reached us and the hands that steadied us, and the experiences that left their quiet marks in the physical matter of who we are. Every person you have ever known has changed your brain. Every book that moved you, every piece of music that arrived at exactly the right moment, every conversation that went somewhere unexpected, each has altered the architecture of your mind in ways that persist. You carry all of it, not as weight, as substance, as the particular and unrepeatable texture of being you. And somewhere in the vast country of what remains unknown in the questions consciousness cannot yet answer about itself, in the unmapped regions of the brain, still waiting for their function to be understood, in the mystery of how matter becomes feeling and feeling becomes meaning, somewhere in all of that, something is being worked out, slowly, without urgency, with the patience of a process that has been running for an extraordinarily long time and is in no particular hurry to arrive. You are part of that process. Your mind, resting now, is part of the universe's long attempt to understand itself. The wondering you did today, whatever small questions moved through you, whatever moments of genuine curiosity arrived and passed, that was the cosmos, briefly, looking inward through you. It is enough. You are enough. Rest now. Even as you lie still, the work continues, gently, without your needing to direct it. The brain hums at its quiet frequency, tending to the life it has always tended. Somewhere outside, the night is doing what nights do, the stars moving imperceptibly through their ancient arcs, the air cooling by degrees, the world turning with a steadiness that has nothing to prove. And inside, in the warm and intricate country of your own mind, something is softening. The thoughts that felt urgent an hour ago are growing distant. The edges of the day are blurring, gently, into something less defined. You are crossing, by degrees, into the other country, the one where the brain's work becomes something stranger and more luminous, where the rules of ordinary time relax, where the mind is free to wander in the ways that only sleep allows. Let it wander. It knows the way. There is nothing left to know tonight. Nothing left to hold or figure out or carry forward into tomorrow. Whatever arrived today, the small victories and the quiet difficulties, the moments of connection and the moments of distance, the thoughts that circled and the feelings that passed through without quite resolving, all of it can rest now. All of it can be set down, here, in the dark, where nothing is required of you. Your body is heavy in the way that bodies become when they are finally, genuinely releasing. The breath is slower now. The space between thoughts is growing wider. And in that space there is something that feels like peace, not the peace of everything being resolved, but the deeper peace of everything being, for now, allowed to simply be. Outside, something is continuing. The quiet turning of the world, the slow movement of air through leaves, the particular quality of stillness that belongs only to the deepest part of the night, when most things are resting and the few things that are not move carefully, gently, so as not to disturb what has finally found its ease. Your brain, faithful and tireless, is already doing what it does, already beginning the long interior work of the night, the sorting and the softening, the weaving of the day into the deeper fabric of a life. You don't need to help. You never needed to help with this part. This part has always known how to happen on its own. The questions can wait. They will be there in the morning, patient and unhurried, ready to be wondered about again in the light. But the light is a long way off, and between here and there is a darkness that is not empty. It is full of the quiet work of rest, full of the brain moving through its own luminous interior, full of the slow and ancient process of becoming, again, ready. Let your eyes be still. Let the breath come and go, without your needing to attend to it. Let the thoughts that are still moving find their way, gradually, to stillness the way water finds stillness after the stone has stopped disturbing it, returning to itself, smooth and dark and deep. You are safe. You are held by the ordinary miracle of your own body, doing what it has always done. The night is long and soft, and yours entirely. I hope you sleep well and dream softly. Good night.